Rocky II, the rematch of the century. In fact, the rematch to end all rematches. This 1979 sequel sees Rocky played innocently once again by Sylvester Stallone, struggling with life and his newfound fame after his fight from the first Rocky movie, where the larger-than-life Apollo Creed, played super charismatically by Carl Weathers, wants a rematch. The question is, does Rocky have what it takes to train up and get back in the ring once again, as well as deal with confronting dilemmas in his personal life? Or, after his brief dash with fame and success, will he just fade out? Spoilers, he totally kicks ass. So today, to celebrate the life and amazing career of Carl Weathers, we are going to go back to Rocky II. Yep, the second installment that is part 2 of the first one in the next chapter, as we look into 10 things that you didn't know about Rocky II. So let's eat lightning and crap thunder as we check it out. Number 10. The original script was kind of insane. So Rocky comes out in 1976, and it is a massive success. So much so, it was the highest grossing movie of 1976. The movie's heart and spirit of the underdog going against all odds really resonates with movie audiences, and made them fall in love with Rocky. So naturally, United Artists didn't want to waste any time and to keep this money train in motion and for a sequel to be made. Sylvester Stallone, who wrote the first movie, wrote an early script called Rocky II Redemption. Although I don't know what Rocky's getting redemption for, but okay, sure. I guess he's seeking redemption for losing the fight in the first movie. And according to the shortlist.com, in an early draft of Rocky II, there was to be a revelation that Rocky's name is actually Robert. Okay. In a flashback sequence that sees Rocky, or rather Robert, meeting Mickey for the first time. And the big Apollo and Rocky rematch was to take place at the Roman Colosseum, which actually would have been pretty epic. So needless to say, to live up to the hurrah and triumph of the first movie, Stallone had some pretty ambitious ideas. I'm referring to the Colosseum here, not so much the Robert. Number 9. Stallone steps up as director. So director John G. Avildsen had directed the first Rocky movie, and so naturally there was anticipation that he would return to helm Rocky II. However, he declined, as during the early production days of Rocky II, he was already signed up to direct the disco extravaganza Saturday Night Fever. Spoilers! He didn't end up directing that movie either. But he did go on to direct The Karate Kid, so that's pretty cool. Yeah. However, Stallone had an amazing idea. Instead of getting some director to direct his work, why doesn't he direct it himself? But the studio weren't so enthusiastic, as Stallone had previously directed fellow sports drama Paradise Alley, which was considered a flop. However, Stallone really wanted the directing job, despite the studio not really thinking that Stallone was up for the job. However, the $225 million that the first Rocky movie made said otherwise. And the fact that Stallone played such a huge, integral part of the development of Rocky suggested that Stallone did know what he was doing. So, Stallone was hired to be his very own director. Number 8. Rocky II is semi-autobiographical. Just like the first Rocky movie, Rocky II is somewhat autobiographical, exploring the struggles and hardships Stallone would face after the release of the first Rocky movie. As thewarpedfactor.com explains, there is a theme of Rocky II of heroes quickly being forgotten and falling into obscurity, which reflects Stallone's real life at that time. After making the first Rocky movie, Stallone was now a huge star, the next big thing. However, the projects he would immediately work on were considered duds, with it being felt that Stallone was a one-hit wonder, and that his time in the spotlight was now done. So Stallone incorporated that into Rocky II, which admittedly is a very powerful and effective storyline. As often is the case with people who do hit the big time, this story's been told many times. Sadly, often people seem to just fade out. But nope, not our main man Stallone here. In fact, Rocky II is so autobiographical, the baby who plays Rocky's newborn infant son was in fact Stallone's real-life son. Number 7. The man who inspired Rocky was nearly in the movie. One of the leading inspirations for the Rocky character was real-life boxer Chuck Wepner. And when it came to making Rocky II, Stallone had the brilliant idea of casting Wepner in the movie as Rocky's trainer. And the character was to be called Chink Webner. I guess because Chink Webner sort of sounds a bit like Chuck Wepner, yeah, I guess. However, Wepner didn't get the part, and the character all round would be cut from the movie. Now, Wepner did a screen test for Stallone, but it was felt that the screen test was no good, which led to the character being taken out of the story altogether. But this chapter goes a little nuts, as Chink Webber would go on to be a character in another Stallone movie, that being the movie Lock Up, which of course featured a character called Chink Webner. Okay, this just got weird. Number 6. Stallone's pre-fight injury. So the very reason Rocky II exists is for its climactic rematch. One thing is for sure though, this scene had to be huge and epic, which it was, but it could have been a disaster, as while getting in shape for the movie, Stallone suffered a tear on his right pectoralis muscle. Now, I don't quite know what that means, but it sure does sound painful. It basically meant that Stallone had to film this intense epic fight scene, but was really in no fit shape to do so. Stallone would have surgery to reattach the muscle, but he was still in no fit shape to film the rematch, so this is why the subplot was added of Rocky fighting right-handed. Yep, it was all down to that injury, as fighting with his right hand would cause less damage than if he used his left one. However, this wasn't the only issue facing the production when it came to filming the rematch. Number 5. Then Adrian was missing. Oh yeah, this fight rematch sure did have a few things going against it, namely Stallone's health as mentioned. However, another huge issue is the fact that this scene couldn't feature Adrian in the audience as originally intended. One of the greatest moments of the fight scene in the first movie was seeing Rocky call out to Adrian, with them both embracing. After all, Rocky is a romance, and if Adrian can't be there, then the romance has been taken out. Basically, Adrian actress Talia Shire was unavailable to film scenes of the rematch, as she was too busy working on another movie, that being Old Boyfriends. So the solution was to film Shire watching the match on TV at home, which incidentally was filmed several months after the rematch itself was actually filmed, supposedly 4 months later. But to be honest, it kind of makes sense that Adrian would stay at home, as she has a newborn baby. And Rocky wouldn't have been able to look after the baby, as he was too busy fighting. So really, it all kind of worked out for the better. Number 4. Nearly 1,000 child extras were required. Well, it's a Rocky movie, that can mean only one thing. It's going to be filmed in Philadelphia. Let's face it, in the first 2 movies, Philadelphia almost feels like its own character. And just like the first movie, we get a training montage. And just as with all other facets of Rocky II, it has to be bigger, better, and genuinely really epic. And the montage scene doesn't disappoint, where we see Rocky jogging, as well as children now joining Rocky. Now in theory, this sounds kind of corny and cheesy, but it totally works and feels very triumphant. In order to film this scene, a whopping 800 local school children were used as extras. And given how annoying kids can be, we can only imagine how tough this was to film. I mean, just imagine 800 of these little guys. This wasn't the only complexities of the behind the scenes of Rocky II, as we once again go back to the end rematch scene. Yeah, that dreaded rematch scene. Just when you thought it was safe to move on, we're back talking about it again. Well, editing that scene together took an insane 8 months in order to get it down to Stallone's satisfaction. Yeah, 8 months. Wow. But guess what? Oh no! We're still not over this fight scene, as there was even more trials and dilemmas. Number 3. Sylvester Stallone and Carl Weathers actually really got pissed off with each other. Okay, so in the epic fight rematch in the movie's climax, we see Rocky and Creed for a moment get really angry with each other and start yelling out taunts and even getting a little pushy-shovey. Well, this is just showing the frustration of the characters, right? Well, wrong. What we see on film wasn't scripted and is a genuine moment of Stallone and Weathers getting really annoyed with each other and lashing out. Okay, so basically what happened is, Stallone and Weathers spent months planning for the fight and practicing with each other, learning how to throw and land their fake movie punches, and to throw these punches without actually making contact. However, for whatever reason, while filming this scene, it just wasn't working. Months of training be damned, and Stallone and Weathers were actually landing punches and hitting each other, to the point where they both got out of character and got genuinely really angry with each other, and had to be dragged away. However, Stallone thought that the actor's real-life outbreak looked really good on film, so that brief moment of them losing their temper with one another stayed in Rocky 2. But yeah, what you're actually seeing here is two actors coming to blows. Literally. Number 2. The movie's poster just features a big black square. No, seriously, the poster is literally nothing but a big black square. Okay, so given how Rocky 2 is all big and epic, you would think the movie's poster would also be big and epic, to get the message out there that Rocky Balboa is back in a spectacular way, where we get, this movie poster. Yep, pretty exciting, isn't it? Just a big black mass, an empty void with small text saying, "The story continues." As people who watch my show know, I love movie posters. Heck, my house is covered in them, and I just find this poster to be so mind-numbingly baffling. Now, there are other Rocky 2 posters that were put together, which actually does focus on the Apollo and Rocky rematch aspect of the movie, which, let's be honest, is the movie's main event. And they are much better. I think my favourite one is this French poster. Wow, Adrian sure looks pissed off here, doesn't she? She really did not want Rocky's floating head to be fighting today, so she sent out her own disapproving floating head. Whereas this one just looks weird, as it looks like both Rocky and Apollo Creed are being attacked by an invisible entity. To also get Rocky 2 out there in the public, Stallone himself wrote the Rocky 2 novelization, in which the story is shown through Rocky's eyes, with him telling us the story, and the book's spelling and language is presented in a way in which Rocky himself would say it, except for scenes that don't feature Rocky, which just displays words spelt and worded normally, which is quite clever. Well, I think so anyway. Number 1. Round 2 of success. Rocky 2 was released in June 1979, and although it didn't make as much as its predecessor's box office intake of $225 million, it was still insanely successful, where it earned just over $200 million on a measly $7 million budget. And it got Stallone's career out of its downward trajectory that it had been in since the release of the first Rocky movie. Rocky 2 would also win a Best Picture award at the American Movie Awards and Favourite Motion Picture of the People's Choice Awards. And I would say the movie got pretty positive reviews from critics. The biggest criticism was that it was just a retread of the first movie, and it just can't live up to that first movie. But, you know, it's meant to feel like the first movie. It's the next chapter. What did they think was going to happen in Rocky 2? What, did they think Rocky would find some magic beans or something? I really like Rocky 2. It feels like a wonderfully triumphant movie. The first movie introduces us to Rocky, but Rocky 2 sees him succeed and reach his full potential, once again really going against all odds, making us root for the character. It's very meta how Stallone took troubles he had with his career at the time and applied those troubles to Rocky and the anxieties of reaching one's full potential, as well as the strain that can be grown from that. So he took a real life negative in his life and used it positively to be creative. The movie itself is not only about meeting expectations but beating them, and I feel like Rocky 2 does that. It may not be as much of a classic as the first Rocky movie, but it is still a worthy attempt, which furthers the irresistible journey of Rocky Balboa. You've also got to put into perspective that Rocky 2 came out at a time when sequels never did as good as their originals. The late 70s didn't have this obsession with franchises like we do now, but a franchise Rocky would become. Anyway, I'm Minty, and thank you, Carl Weathers. Thank you for your craft and the many years you've given us all great entertainment and joy. Rest in peace, good sir. See ya!